verses 21, 22, and 23. Now, let's look at Nehemiah. He declared fasting. And through that fasting, he got permission to go and start rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. Through that fasting. And you can get that one in Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can imagine how these men of God were able to achieve things through their fasting. Now, let's look at Esther. In the book of Esther, chapter 4, verse 16. Through the fasting declared by Esther, the Jews were saved. So the Jews were saved as a result of the fasting declared by Esther. They would have been destroyed. They would have perished. But they were saved as a result of the fasting declared by Esther. Now, let's move forward in the Old Testament. You remember the man Jehoshaphat? That is 2 Chronicles, chapter 20. Precisely in verse 3. The Lord gave him victory over his enemies because they fasted. Not only him, they fasted. They fasted. They wouldn't have been able to be victorious if not for that fasting and prayer. Also, you remember Jonah. That is in the book of Jonah, chapter 3, verses 4 to 10. Nineveh would have been destroyed if not because they fasted. Their fasting turned Jonah to liar. So I can get lots and lots of these generals in the Old Testament that achieved a lot of things through fasting and prayer. Now, let's move to New Testament. Fasting in New Testament. As you all know, Jesus fasted for 40 days before the beginning of his ministry. You can get that in Luke, in Matthew, in Mark, and in John. 40 days before the beginning of his ministry. Now, let's read Luke chapter number 4. Luke chapter number 4, verse number 2. And you hear what is there. Being 40 days tempted of the devil. And in those days, he did eat nothing. And when they were ended, he afterward hungered. Can I read again? Being 40 days tempted of the devil. And in those days, he did eat nothing. And when they were ended, he afterward hungered. Let's look at another man, another actor on the stage of New Testament. John the Baptist. He taught his disciples to fast often. If you read Mark chapter 2 verse 18 or Luke chapter 5 verse 3, you get the message right. Again, there was a person, Anna, served God in the temple with fasting and prayer, according to Luke chapter 36, 37, and 38. You remember Paul? He fasted following his conversion. In Acts chapter 9, verse 9. And later on the ship, when he was in the ship, in Acts chapter 27, verse 33 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. Then verse 43 and 44. When he was converted, he fasted. And later, when he was on the missionary journey in the ship, he was able to achieve a lot through fasting. Can you still remember this man, Cornelius? He fasted and prayed, and the Lord answered him. In Acts chapter 10, verses 30. Then, in the early church, the common practice was fasting, and prayer. In fact, you can easily go to Acts chapter 13, you read verses 1, 2, and 3, and you see the examples there. Later in church history, every daddies, fathers, and mothers in Christianity, they started fasting. So you can see now that fasting is not strange in the Old Testament. Neither is it strange in the New Testament. Now, let's go to church fathers. When I say church fathers, I mean in this contemporary world, the leaders, the founders, and the movers, the preachers of the gospel. Let me start with this. The Francis of Assisi. After the Dark Ages, this man came out with gospel life. Reverend Pastor Founder S.B.J. Oshofu. With fasting and prayer, when the whole African was filled with idolatry. And through his prayer, through his fasting and prayer method, God dropped a church. And he gave him an altar of holiness, through which he will gather people together and lead them to heaven. Apostle I destroy through the principle of fasting and prayer,